And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Outside the Echo Chamber show at the Frontier Communications Studios, live from HD Media headquarters on Virginia Street in Charleston, West Virginia. Production today being brought to you by the Media Center, and we appreciate all that they do to make things go here at HD Media. And today we have a power-packed show. I'm Dana Farrell, by the way. You might notice that Doug Scaff is not with us this morning. He is in the sunshiny state of Florida. He'll be back next week, but filling in today, and I'm glad to do so. We have a power-packed lineup this morning, and that's going to include Todd Judy of Todd Judy Ford talking to us about the state of the auto industry and what you as a consumer can expect, what's going on behind the scenes, what you can expect to come up in the next months and years ahead. We also have in the second segment Lance Schultz, Martin Transport, talk to us about what they do based in West Virginia as a trucking company and what their challenges are, the upsides, the downsides, and what you can expect there, and what their needs are in terms of employment and the logistics and so forth that affect that industry. And then finally, in the closing segment, we're going to talk to regional editor here of HD Media, Mr. Lee Wolverton, and he will be joining us, talking to us about what's in the news, what's been in the news, what's coming up, and how that's decided what gets in the news. And so that's always an interesting segment. So great lineup today, but first of all, here we have with us, joining us this morning, Mr. Todd Judy himself, and he's going to talk to us. We welcome you, Todd. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Okay. Well, we think it's a lot of fun. We enjoy it on our end, and we certainly, I think it gives our viewers a chance to really get behind the scenes and get past the ads and those kinds of stuff, and really talk about what's going on in a particular industry. And so, and we will disclose you guys are a partner with HD Media, so we'll disclose that. But we're not here to talk about the dealership in itself. We're here to talk about the industry. So let's take a look at that. First of all, let me ask how. We know that by looking at your ads and things, you guys are a family-owned business. How did you get into the industry itself?
Yeah, so I was actually 20 years old when I first got into the car business. I was a computer science major at WVU, and I was trying to make a little bit of side money because I wanted to buy a car. And so I did all this research. We're talking about probably this is the year 2000. Internet's just starting to really kind of get big on a local level. So I taught myself how to build websites, and I walked into a car dealership and tried to get them to hire me to build them a website, and they offered me a job selling cars. That's how I got in the car business.
Wow. So you don't have like a family legacy that your parents or extended family were in this business. You got into it yourself.
Yeah, really. And it's from the more the technology side of it, because they were, at that point, people were just starting to go to the internet to kind of get some information about cars, and they would send inquiries to the dealership. Dealership that hired me, there were two guys that were 75 years old, didn't know how to turn a computer on, and so they needed somebody that could interact with people digitally, and so that's how I ended up in the car business.
So how many years ago was that?
So we're talking 22 years now.
Right.
Yeah, I was 20 years old when that happened.
So right about the time the internet really, you kind of date along with, side by side with the internet as it took root, and especially within the car industry. So you feel like that gives you an advantage, I would assume, that you'd be able to understand that side of it well.
Yeah, so that was sort of the new wave in the car business at that point, was the inclusion of the internet, and as it just continues to become more and more part of everything we do, and so I've sort of been in that aspect of it from the beginning.
We'll talk more about that in a minute, but we talked about, you guys are a family and you have a son. We were just talking about before we came on air that, your wife is there getting him ready. She couldn't be with you on the show today because of that. What's a typical day like for the Judy family and running a major dealership in the business here in West Virginia?
Yeah, so it's we're kind of all over the place. So we're up at 6 o'clock in the morning getting him ready for school. He's got to be there at 7 o'clock. And so she'll run and take him over there, and then get ready for work, and I come into work, and so then I'll see her right after this. We have a meeting with all of our key people here about 10 o'clock, and then she'll go pick him up from school at 2, and then back to the dealership at 3, and we'll do some commercials, and then we'll finish up the day there, and then hopefully we got a couple hours in the evening at home. So that's
hopefully. You said hopefully a couple hours.
Yeah, it depends on what happens at work.
Till you get calls at home, hey, this has went wrong.
Right.
Okay, and for sure. Now, your son's name, Killian?
Killian, yeah.
Is he involved in some extracurricular activities? I guess he's at that age. Is he into...
He's I guess he follows after me. He's a little tech kid, so he likes coding. He's learning how to do some coding stuff, and he's all into electronics, and He figured out the other day in one of the cars how to change the display, where your navigation system is. So he figured out on a Ford how to make it say Ford or Lincoln or Raptor. There's some kind of programming built into it where they can use them in all the different lines.
I can see he will probably be part of one of the robotics teams there.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I think that'd be good for him. He'd really get a kick out of that.
And those, we just seen in the news we had this week, there was a robotics team from my area, and I live in northern Kanawha County in Sissonville and represent that area. They had a team go out to Texas or in Iowa, I believe, in national competition, and they do really, really well. So this is something that's really coming on, those robotic competitions and teams. So, well, good for him. But so my point being is, that's something you have to prepare for, besides just getting ready for school, shuffling your business and be there for them whenever they have their activities and things going on. I know that as a parent very, very well.
Yeah.
All right. What has changed? You said 22 years in the industry, in the business. What has changed since you've been in the business?
It's been a whole lot of stuff. The inclusion of the internet has certainly streamlined a lot of the processes. When I first got into the car business, the average person would hop around to 5 different dealerships to gather their information before they made a purchase decision. Well, now with the internet, they spend 2-3 weeks online doing their research, going to different websites, kind of narrowing down what car they think they might be right for them. They can read other people's experiences, and then they pop into 1 or 2 dealerships. Once they've narrowed that process down, check out the car, see which one they like better, and then they've got all the information they need to make a good decision. So it's made it a whole lot more streamlined of a process.
So you think your buyers are a little bit more educated when they come on the lot than they would have been, and certainly, I guess, 22 years ago because of information available to them. Let's talk real quick. Everybody's talking about, you drive by a lot of car lots. I told you I drove up to Cleveland day before yesterday and back yesterday. Drove by some dealerships, and I see people trying to space their new car inventory around so that their lot looks full. What kind of problems are you still having problems with inventory and supply lines?
Yeah, so the semiconductor shortage has been a lot more prolonged of an event than everybody thought it was going to be. So it really kind of started to surface at the beginning of last year. And at that point, I think they thought it was going to be fairly short-lived, but it's really been challenging getting the supply lines back up and running. There's a bunch of different factors. When COVID kicked in and everyone was stuck at home, they bought a bunch of electronics, and they use the same kind of chips that we do. So the demand for that stuff went up, and they took a lot of the chips. And then sort of getting back to manufacturing, the components for those chips come from all over the world. And so as COVID has hit different areas of the world differently, you've had certain materials unavailable, and the chips are all different based on each car. You need a different one for navigation than you need for your system that controls your air conditioning. So maybe the navigation chip's made here and the air conditioning chip's made here, and so it takes about 1,500 per car. You get 1,200 of them, you got to find those last 300. And then there's other stuff. There was an earthquake in Japan recently, and one of the places they make them, one of the gases required to make the chips comes from, I believe it's neon, comes from Ukraine. So now that Ukraine's been having some trouble with Russia, they've not been available to send out the neon gas, and so it just keeps moving on and on. Really, we don't have an exact idea of when that's going to end.
No. So that has obviously affected the used car market. So how have you guys adjusted with your used car inventory? And I hear your commercials that you're paying up 30-40% above book price for used vehicles.
Yeah, so it's totally changed our business model. It's been really interesting for us. We used to sell about 1 new car to 1 used car, so it was pretty close to an even ratio, and now it's basically 8 used cars to every new car just because new is not available. So we've sort of changed to a fast moving. We pay above book value because we know the demand's there because there's just no cars, and so we give people pretty good value. We move the cars real quick, and so.
Well, let me ask you this, because there are a lot of people out there driving a vehicle, and we used to joke when I was teaching over at George Washington High School with Coach Green over there. Well, welcome to the 100,000 mile club. You're driving a vehicle with 100,000 miles on it. You used to think, well, the value of that vehicle dropped down significantly on trade. But is that still the case? With people holding on to their vehicles and selling them longer, is that changed the value of that vehicle?
Yeah. So 100,000 miles isn't what it used to be. The engineering tolerances for pretty much every manufacturer have gotten a lot tighter, and so these motors and transmissions just last a whole lot longer than they used to, and those are your big ticket repair items. So it used to be you couldn't get a loan if you had a car with more than 75,000 miles. Now the banks will do over 100,000 miles because they realize the longevity's there. So
the financing's there. So yeah, if you have a vehicle like that, you shouldn't hesitate to at least explore it, looking and see what your vehicle is worth on the lot. And so that's interesting. I think that's important for consumer. What's the buying process, the purchasing process? Has it changed? What's it like now if somebody comes on the lot?
Yeah, so it's really very easy to kind of tailor the process the way you want to go. And so, it used to be you'd have to show up on the lot and you'd talk to a salesperson and they would give you all the information, show you the cars, you'd make a decision. You can still do it that way if that's how you like to do it. But you can also go online and do your research. A lot of people will set an appointment, so we've got a car ready for them because they want to be in and out as quickly as possible. We also got the ability to do the entire transaction online. So, you can work your own numbers, you can submit your own credit application, pick the bank that you want to go with, and then we can ship the car right to your driveway. So however you want to do it, it's available nowadays.
Great. And well, what do you see? We just talked about especially the last 2 years, especially how it's changed the market. We talked about the previous 22 years. What do you see in the next 5 to 10 years happening with this market, given the circumstances that we're in?
I think probably what we'll see a lot more of is a shift to ordering vehicles. With the limited availability, the manufacturers are trying to make sure that the stuff that they build is what people want, and so the ordering process has gotten a lot better. It used to be we would order 1 or maybe 2 cars a month, and those were usually kind of oddballs. Stuff that we wouldn't normally stock, like a weird combination of packages or something like that. Now everybody's coming in and they pretty well know what they want, and so we're ordering vehicles daily, and they show up 6-8 weeks later depending on what the package is. But the manufacturers know that they can make exactly what somebody wants. It's not just going to go and sit on a lot.
Okay, great. And knowing that, we talked about that role as a dealer before we came on air and things, and talk to us about that dealer's role in the process of buying a car, whether it be used or new, or servicing a vehicle and things like that, and the community itself. What's the importance of having dealers in the process?
Well, so, dealers have always kind of had a negative connotation, but really that's shifted a lot over the years. At least I hope so. And we play a really big part in the role of the community. So we employ about 180 people right now in Charleston, and we use local vendors whenever possible. So we put a lot of money back into the economy, but we're also... One of the things that we can do is we can shift for the local community a lot better than the manufacturers can, because they're working on, on a national level. So, for example, I got a phone call the other day from one of the local ambulance companies that we do service work for, and it affected them in a way that I wasn't really anticipating. They can't buy new ambulances. They're just not manufacturing them. So normally they would rotate them every 3 years or so. Well, that's just not available to get them that quickly, and so we're custom tailoring a program to them to help keep those vehicles on the road and in good shape, so that they can pick people up that need their help and transport them very quickly. So we've made that shift for them to make sure that we can continue to support them. We can do the same thing for, police departments and other first responders that they've got to have their vehicles to do what they do. Right,
and a lot of dealers, we talked about your role with sponsorships and support of community projects and things like that as well. I know you guys do a ton of things and with your marketing. And so we talk about, and speaking of marketing, we talked about the changing habits of the buyers and the industry and so forth. How has that changed how you guys market over the last, even the last couple of years since the industry and COVID and the parts issues?
Well, so it's a lot more complicated than it used to be, because people get their information from so many different ways now. So it used to be you could just have a website and you'd put a little bit of information on there. Well, now that website has an entire staff behind it, so that people don't just want to go and read information. They want to interact with you and get information. So we have to have a chat feature and an email response, and Facebook has become a big part of it, social media. So we have people that will respond on social media, because people were a lot more comfortable asking questions on, hey, what happens if I do this in the transaction? And so we respond to them right there on the social media channels, on top of the traditional placing the ads the way that we've been doing it for years and years.
So most dealerships, and I assume you guys do too, have somebody dedicated to do nothing but just oversee your social media and marketing side of things.
Yeah, we get a staff of about 10 people, and so they're very specialized, and they can't sell you a car even if you wanted them to. Their entire job is just to interact with people and make sure that they're having the best online experience they can have.
Okay, well, we covered a lot of ground here. What would be your advice? And we talked, because it's such a dynamic industry right now, so much going on. What would be your best advice to somebody that's interested? Maybe, like I said, they've got a vehicle that's used, they're driving now, they may think it's not as worth as much as it be. What would be your advice to somebody coming into the market right now?
So if you think it might be a good time to trade, one of the advantages that everybody has right now is whatever they're driving around in is probably worth more than it was 2 years ago. And that didn't used to be the case. Car values just dropped year after year. And as long as you've taken good care of that car, there's still a demand for it because, making the new ones has been difficult. So the overall supply line has shrunk down very, very dramatically on cars in general. They can't make the new ones. The new ones don't turn into used ones. So there's a shortage on everything right now. So that means everyone's car's worth more than it used to be. So the transaction price, the difference between the trade-in and what they're purchasing really hasn't changed a whole lot. It's a pretty good time to buy a car versus a lot of other places where we've seen maybe an increase in bacon and plywood and stuff like that. When you're driving around that car, it's actually increased in value. It makes it a little bit easier to make a move. But if you find something you like, you probably can't sit on it too long because they go pretty quickly nowadays.
Okay, and I can't end this segment without asking you this because I've been guilty of doing this.
Sure.
I'm getting ready to trade in or maybe think about trading my vehicle and we're driving around the lots. So I run out and wash my vehicle and clean up and vacuum it out. Is that important?
It makes a difference, yeah. So if we think that a vehicle's been better taken care of, we assume that we're going to have to spend a little bit less on reconditioning, and it does increase the value of the vehicle.
So how it looks on the exterior sometimes, or a lot of times, may reflect on how it's been treated under the hood as well.
Right, yeah. So, that's probably a broad generalization, but it can make a big difference when you're looking to trade that vehicle in.
Well, that's fascinating because, I've been guilty of that. I think most people are.
Yeah.
I'm going to trade it and go at least wash it off. But then again, I've seen some people that don't care. Just roll it in.
Right.
How it is, and I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, it happens. And we've got a whole department to clean them up. So, we're prepared for it if it comes in that way.
Okay, well, great. It's been very enlightening. I think this is one of those things because everybody's driving a vehicle. It's part of the American way of life, and we want reliability. We want nice things in our vehicles, and be able to get us to what we need to do. It's important for our livelihoods, so this is not going to change, I think, anytime soon in America. So I think your insight and what's going on in the industry and what looking ahead is invaluable. So we really appreciate you taking it. As you said, you got a very busy day, taking your morning to come over here to the HD Media studios and joining us and giving us the insight. So we'll be taking a break here on the Frontier Communications Studios outside the Echo Chamber. And when we come back, we have more special guests lined up. We have Lee Wolverton, who is a regional editor with HD Media here, talking to us about what's in the news, what's going to be in the news. And trust me, there's always something breaking in the news. So it should be a fascinating segment. Dana Farrell will be right back here on the Outside the Echo Chamber.
We know who we are, where we've been, where we're going. Like hospitals all over America, we are changing, redefining, restructuring ourselves to be the best community health system in the region we serve. We are 2 hospitals with more than 30 locations, 450 providers, and 1 mission: to heal. As one, we are Thomas Health, caring for our communities today and tomorrow.
Proudly advocating for workers and their families, the West Virginia AFL-CIO is a group of 600 labor organizations representing 70,000 active and 70,000 retired union members. We represent first responders, healthcare workers, educators, coal miners, construction workers, plant workers, truck drivers, grocery store clerks, and every job in between. We believe every worker has the right to fair wages, good benefits, and a safe workplace. That's what the West Virginia AFL-CIO fights for every day.
A new day begins, and what happens today must be covered, reported, and passed on to everyone in the region we serve. We are journalists, staff writers, editors, storytellers. Who are we? We are HD Media, trustworthy and always here for the times we live in.
What started as the Parmar Oil Company in 1967 has grown into 116 convenience stores in 4 states. Parmar convenience stores offer monthly product specials and grab-and-go items. Located just down the street from where you live, Parmar stores are all about being your above-par convenience store. If you don't have a Parmar store near you now, you will soon. Parmar Convenience Stores, neighbors serving your community and making life a little bit easier every day.
And welcome back to Outside the Echo Chamber, live here in the Frontier Studios, live on Virginia Street, Charleston, West Virginia, at the HD Media headquarters. I'm Dana Farrell, sitting in for Doug Scaff here on this Thursday morning. And joining me in this segment is our Vice President of News, Executive Editor, Mr. Lee Wolverton, here with HD Media.
How you doing, Dan?
Oh, good to have you back on the show. Last time I saw you, we were over at the Capitol outside of the House chambers, and a lot going on there. But really, the news never stops, does it?
No, there's always something happening.
So what's a typical, we just had our first guest on asking what a typical day, what's a typical day like for you here at the HD Media Studios?
Well, I'd say a typical day for our staff, who are more interesting, I think, than the editor, usually starts with a 9:30 reporters call that is led by Jeff Ryder, our city editor. All the reporters are on there, and they go over what they'll be covering throughout the day. And we proceed from there to morning and afternoon budget meetings and newspaper parlance. A budget is basically a story schedule where we plan to play them. And we hold a morning budget meeting with all the editors from our daily properties, and then we have an afternoon budget meeting where we review what we have. So basically it's a way to ensure that everybody's on the same page, everybody knows what's going on. These are some things that we've begun in since I arrived here, the reporter meetings and the joined budget meetings, just to make sure everybody knows what's going on, and there's a lot of interaction between reporters and editors and editors and editors.
So everybody understands their role in this. And so speaking of roles, in your role in this in terms of as Vice President of News and Executive Editor, what is decided what's going to be front page news for the day?
Well, those things are judgment calls. You're basically, we're assessing what we believe is of the greatest interest, of the greatest news value. Those are calls that sometimes we get right, sometimes we could do better, but that's ultimately what it is. On a lot of days, it's fairly obvious. Whatever the major news of the day is, when there's a Capitol breach, what's leading the paper that day. But ultimately that's what it's about. It's just making a judgment as editors on what we think meets those criteria: broad interest and high news value. Those are the things we're always seeking in what we play on the front page.
So one thing about print media is obviously it's tangible, and it has to go through a press, and it has to be logistically distributed out across the coverage area. What's the deadline that you have each day, before you make the decision, okay, this is what's going to be in the news tonight?
Well, our afternoon budget meeting is held at 4 p.m., and we generally know by then what we'll be running. The copy comes in later. That varies from one paper to the next. Huntington has a later deadline than Charleston does, so there's a little more time, and they get more night news in. We tend to have to follow. But basically, by 4 o'clock each day we know, and if a story is tentative at that point, we'll generally decide to hold it and come back at it another day.
So that 4 p.m. is really what you're deciding what's going to be the next morning.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Right.
Now, has that changed? Has technology, the digital side of things, and everything, has that changed any of that, or has that been the same throughout?
Well, one of the participants in our morning and afternoon budget meetings is Bashay Sekla, who's our digital editor here in Charleston. And his task is to make sure that we've got fresh content up there at the key times during the day when we know traffic to websites tends to increase. That's basically in the mornings when people get up, shortly before lunch, end of the day, and then at 9 p.m. in the evening. And that's a challenge for us, because the staffing isn't what it once was, although we've been working to rebuild that. But that's something we have to work through to ensure that we want people to see fresh content when they come there. And that's one of the things specifically I've tasked Bashay with doing, is making sure that if you come to the site at those times, there's something new there.
Well, you talked about the deadlines and trying to make a decision on when things are going to roll out, and you have that usually late afternoon time period that it's going to be for the next day. News is breaking, and you can't get the sources that you need to be able to verify things. At what point do you say, hey, we can go with this, or we can't maintain the credibility to it?
That could be a decision that's made late in the day, depending on the nature of the story. in a breaking news situation, which is identified as something, that really we have to cover. That's how we view it. That has to be in there, and we have to be on it. You take, I think, the Bell plant explosion from a couple of years ago is a good example. In a situation like that, it's got to be covered. You've got to do the best you can with what you have. Our priority is always to get it right, so we do need to be particular about certain facts that if they can't be verified, they can't be substantiated, then in those cases we'd have to let that go and come back and pursue it another day if we didn't feel our sourcing was strong enough. On other stories that don't fall into the breaking news category, but stories we're trying to get into the paper or try to get online, basically it's the criteria is do we know it? Can we prove it? And if we can't, then we'll need to hold and come back at it and try again.
Okay, and I think that looking at the industry as a whole, we talked to the previous guest about how his business and industry has changed. What have you seen change the most, and what are you getting ready for over the next 10 years? Look back over the last 10 to 20 years in this business, and looking at the next 10, what do you see?
Well, the change has been very dramatic over the period you just identified. Obviously, the internet's come into play. The newspaper's business model is shifting away from paid print advertising. Advertising generally has been in free fall since 2005. It's fallen from $49.4 billion industry-wide to $9.6 billion in 2020. So our model is shifting more toward a digital subscription model. And that's a dramatic change. That's really completely upends the way we've done things. But I think the thing that has stayed the same is it's still about getting good stories. So ultimately, that's the nature of the game. That's the business we're in. That's what we're still pursuing. The more of those you get, the more other issues will take care of themselves.
In my role in this is working with the sports areas of things. With RSN Sports, we obviously work and focus more on the digital side of things. But I've always maintained, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think there's always going to be a place for the print side of things. People still want to feel it and touch it, and I think it lends credibility when they can do that.
Yeah, I hope so. It's an expensive proposition. It's the most expensive facet of our operation. I think that in markets like these where we have an older population, I think print's days can be extended some. Our weekly papers, we own 7 of those, and I think those papers are going to be around for a while. But there's no question about it. Changes are coming for print. I mean, it's expensive to do, and it's a very laborious process to get that paper to doorsteps. Okay. So changes are coming.
Okay, I'm gonna pivot here and look at let's get specifics. We've talked about how the news and how things are. Let's get specifics. What's going on here? What's in the area and in West Virginia? What's going on? What's in the hopper? What's the you said today? You just sit down and look at what's the breaking news? What are you looking at covering?
Well, I'm looking more toward what we have coming for the weekend. For Sunday, we'll have a story from Mike Toney on Alex Mooney, who is in the rare position of being the target of 2 ethics investigations, which experts tell us is a rarity. So Mike will have something on that. We'll have a piece coming from Rick Steelhammer about a local woman who was involved in the design of the new design for the remodeled Empire State Building in New York City. So those are some of the highlights of the things we have coming up, and over the weekend I'll be coming back at the governor in my column to ask him some more questions about why he won't be more transparent.
He's always newsworthy, right?
He's always
got
newsworthy.
something going on.
Yes, he is.
That's for sure. And speaking of, the great thing when we talked about digital side of it, it does allow people to be able to go back and look more readily at the archives of what's something that's lasting news. And so looking back at this week, I know a couple of the things you guys covered was looking at the charter school filing over here in Nitro. I guess they pulled pulled their application, not the application for the school, charter school, but for that location. I guess they're no longer going to enter into that lease.
Yeah.
And there's no indication of where they're going, right?
Right. And I think that's a product of Ryan Quinn's reporting. He's been all over every facet of that, and I think they're responding to some of the things that he's been unearthing in his reporting on charter.
Well, education is one of those topics that affects so many people because everybody has a child, right? Knows somebody, a neighbor has a child, family member has a child, and so certainly when we talk about the state of education, it's always important concern. So I know that plays well. And
we're very fortunate. I think Ryan is by far the best education reporter in the state and one of the best in multiple states. He really understands the issue and follows it very closely.
Yeah. So how does good journalism involve the community involved in there? So,
well, the one of the stories I mentioned about the Empire State Building came from a tip that Jill Briggs picked up, who works for us. She forwarded that to us, and somebody mentioned it to her when she was at an event. So that's one of the ways it comes in. I think one of the big stories we did a couple of years ago about the distribution of counterfeit N95 masks to emergency responders came from a tip. Somebody called the Charleston Gazette-Mail and said we should know. And that led to a lot of reporting and some award-winning work by Joe Severino. So, we listen to what people say and we follow up as best we can. We can't go after every one of them, but those are a couple of examples of some good stories that came from somebody reaching out.
Oh, great stuff. Okay, interesting. Always something in the news. It never stops. And I know you know that. We're going to take a quick break here on Outside the Echo Chamber. We'll be right back to close up this show here in the Frontier Communications studio. And a couple real quick questions of our executive editor here with the West Virginia Gazette-Mail and HD Media, Mr. Lee Woverton. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
The relationship between a lawyer and a client is based on trust. You have to make certain that the lawyer you hire has your best interests at heart. We typically meet our clients at the worst times of their lives, and it's our job to help them. Over the years, we've been entrusted with some of the biggest cases in West Virginia. That's because we have a track record of success and getting exceptional results. We built a reputation as one of the go-to law firms throughout the state of West Virginia.
Joining me, high-profile lawyer Ben Salango. Ben, it's a real honor to have you on.
In fact, many of our cases come from other lawyers. Lawyers who've worked with us, lawyers who've worked against us, and even those who've merely heard of our results. We're proud of the reputation we've earned in the community for providing exceptional, aggressive legal representation. When you hire my law firm, you don't get excuses, you get results.
And Marshall wins another one.
I could take any of these guys one-on-one. Oh, really?
Oh, no.
Ah! For a limited time, ask about no payments till summer.
Friends and family pricing for everyone, even trash talkers like Wes.
Here in West Virginia, we're known as hard workers, friendly faces, and people with a caring spirit. At Summit Community Bank, those qualities are at the core of all that we do. We're a group of experienced professional bankers that you've known for many years. We work hard to earn your business and will work even harder to help you succeed. We customize banking solutions that work for you. We're Summit Community Bank. Service beyond expectations.
People keep asking me how Todd Judy Ford has the best selection of vehicles at a time of national shortage.
The secret is our 130% of Kelley Blue Book for your trade-in.
Everyone wants to trade the car with us and get more money.
And now we're making it even better.
We will beat any other dealer's trade offer by $1,000 guaranteed.
If we can't beat it, we'll just give you the cash.
So bring in that car, upgrade your vehicle, and get top dollar for your trade-in now.
Just go to ToddJudyFord.com and see for yourself.
Looking for a friendly bank that you can turn to in your community? Bank where the decisions on your needs are made locally. With online banking and 7 locations. Poco Valley Bank, where relationships matter.
And welcome back to Outside the Echo Chamber, live here in the Frontier Communications Studios here at the HD Media Studios. And this is powered by the Media Center on the production side. We want to thank Ethan Young and Dan Shreve for the production of today's shows. And Michael Sussman is on camera today. We want to thank him. As always, those guys are doing a tremendous job behind the scenes. Dana Farrell here, filling in for Doug Scaff, who is in sunshiny state of Florida here. But he's on a business trip, right?
Absolutely.
So we hope that that's been taken. No, I talked to him earlier, and some great ideas coming out of that, so which will make this show or paper everything better. But speaking of the paper and the news, one last question. As a delegate and representative here in Kanawha County, I get calls and get blowed up all the time about a road or internet service or some kind of issue going on, and it's like, well, best thing to do is just let's call the newspaper, let's call the news station or whatever, and bring attention to ours. Do you get those kind of calls, and how do you decide what gets featured?
We get those calls, and I think it's, it goes back to the same kind of questions that we're asking about where we place stories. It's based on news value and broadness of interest. We don't have the manpower to cover everything, just as you don't as a delegate to respond to everything. So that's the first part of the assessment is what is the news value and how broad is the interest in that topic likely to be. And if you check those boxes, then that makes it much more likely that we're going to pursue it. If there's a good story in it, it's the old saying in the business is there a good yarn? Sometimes that'll prompt you to pursue a story. But it's, those are judgment calls too, and it's based on having to assess the available resources. I'm the editor, and there's stories I'd like us to do that we just don't ultimately have the ability to do because some stories just rise to the top and have to be done. You can look at the opioids trial that's happening right here in Charleston. I mean, that's something we feel obligated to cover because of the paper's history on that issue and the importance to the state of West Virginia. So, when you do that, then those are people you don't have available to pursue things. So it's really, a judgment call on a case-by-case basis, assessing it based on those criteria to see if it meets them, or see if you just think you've got something you can work with.
How many times a week do you think you have the news set, and then something comes up and you have to change it?
It's a regular occurrence to me. That's one of my favorite parts of the job. The idea is that we want to be planned and prepared and know what we're doing each and every day. And then if news gets in the way and upends that, then we're in a bonus. Then we're prepared a couple of more days in advance, and we have to shift gears. But having to do that, I think, is one of the exciting parts of the business. I'd much rather be in that situation than the dry spells that we also go through occasionally, where we're scrambling to find good stories to cover. So,
great. Well, you've been watching Outside the Echo Chamber here live in the Frontier Communications Studios here at HD Media, and powered by the Media Center here on our production side. I'm Dana Farrell, and that concludes today's show. Now, we broadcast live every Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 9:30 a.m. And so if you want to make sure you're tuning in, you can catch that at wvgazettemail.com or heralddispatch.com for sure. And then there's a whole host of other list of ways to get that on our Facebook media pages and things. You can watch them on demand. Then we break these segments up too, so you can watch them just by segment, but many ways to get the information out there. So next week coming up, Doug Scaff will be back on Tuesday. I know on some of the things on the agenda we're looking at are looking at broadband and how that's being rolled out in West Virginia. What's the status of it? Everybody's saying, where's it at? Okay, we know we're spending this money. Well, where's it at? We'll try to take a look at what the status is on that. He's also looking at inviting over the Attorney General, Patrick Morsay, to talk about a couple of issues that he has going on. So a lot lined up coming up next week and in the future. So, and you can contact us outside the Echo Chamber, the Echo Chamber at hdmediallc.com. You can see that on your screen there. So you can just get a screenshot of that there if you want to just kind of frame that up for you here. Let's see, we get that straight on the monitor. But any number of ways to get in touch with us. Obviously, the paper, every day except Monday, and that's online as well. But what is it, 99 cents get you started to be able to get this digital subscription?
Yeah. There is a 99-cent deal going on right now.
So I think that's an opportunity to get involved. And then if you want to get, like I said, the hard copy so you can take it with you on the airplane or anywhere you want to go, then that's the way to go. So we thank you for joining us. Dana Farrell here live on the Outside the Echo Chamber. We'll be back next week with Doug Scaff.